All right, all right, all right. Hello, hello, everyone, and welcome back to On the Count podcast. Um, Here we are today. I'm your host, Pedro Lugo. Just by the way,
This is what
yeah,
happens when it's
don't
been
look
a
at me,
while.
Keone. I'm just laughing because I got all this other stuff in mind, and I was like, "Wow, okay, well, we're gonna go with this because we have been talking, and we're gonna have some fun today. We are
Yeah, we're
going."
gonna have some fun. We got a couple of episodes with guests that we had to pre-record that we kind of I kind of forgot about, so we got to get those out. But especially when 2024 rolls around, we're gonna get back to regularly meeting. Pedro's had a lot of things come up. I've had a lot of things come up, as you all know from watching the channel. We do a lot of other shows, so but this is one of my favorite ones to do, and we're gonna have some fun with Pedro today. Some of you who will be watching this for the first time, Pedro, give them a little bit of background on you for those new people that'll be chiming in because we will be putting this episode on Rumble. It'll be our first Rumble episode, so they won't know who you are.
Yes, hello. My name is Pedro Lugo. I am a retired lieutenant from the Federal Bureau of Prisons. I worked for the Bureau of Prisons 27 years, and I did 10 years about military prior to that. And I retired in 2019. In Prior to that, those 27 years, I was a lieutenant for about 10 years. I was a counselor for five, and I worked different positions within the Bureau of Prisons and did a number of things with the Bureau of Prisons. Traveled all the way across the country for many different reasons, for jobs and transportation of inmates and different stuff that I had the chance to do. Great. Got to be some incredible people and got to do some incredible stuff that I was like, wow. Now I think back, it's like, wow, I can't believe I did that.
I got two big questions from what you just said. One is, um, you had different capacities working in the federal prison. Which one? I don't want to say favorite, as if it's like, yeah, I was a corrections officer. It's like, but which one was the most? I don't know if I should say satisfactory. Had got the most satisfaction at the end of the day, or the one that you enjoyed doing the most? Was it the counseling? Was it the corrections officer? Which one did you like the best?
I will have to go back to the beginning. Let me just so I clarify. You
Mhm.
asking me a question, and that's a lot of is a bigger answer due to the fact that when I started, I really thought about I'm just going to do this for a short period of time because I had other ideas. I want to do some other stuff. My I wanted really to have either my own business or work in big corporate and stuff like that. Then I realized that was not it because working in the office would have not really worked for me. So I really thought about the Bureau of Prisons as a short stint, but then I started enjoying the job. It's not an easy job. What I started enjoying and seeing was that you have the opportunity, the chance to make a difference in somebody's life.
Mhm.
And at the beginning, as an officer working with certain inmates, I work with a lot of mental health, which is the hardest job there is. And I think in any prison, working with mental health is just, oh my God, it takes a toll on you mentally and physically. It takes a toll on you working with mental health. But I was working with some, and I worked with this guy, and I helped him out a couple of times. And all of a sudden, I'm home one evening, and I get a phone call. I answer the phone, and it's an ex inmate. He's been out of the prison. He calls me, and back then, this is mid 90s. So you can go through a phone book and find somebody's name or go through the operator, and talk to him and get somebody's number. So he had gotten my number somehow and he calls me and I'm worried about it, but all he really wanted to call me just to say thank you and say thank you because I helped him out. I gave him some guidance. And I treated him like a human being. That's one of the things that he said. So he just wanted to say that, which which is fine. At the same token, kind of scared me that anybody can find me like that as well. So I took my number off the listing, and I don't think we ever spoke again. But that left an impression on me that wow, you actually do have a job that you can make a difference. So, as an officer, I had that opportunity. As a counselor, that really gave me a bigger um, opportunity to help many other inmates in several situations, especially when they were leaving the prison. I will be able to set them up with jobs, contacts outside the prison. This is what you need to be doing as soon as you get out. These are the things that I learned. As a lieutenant, you have the opportunity to help them, but it's not as much because you run in the prison. So it's a little bit different when you're doing that, especially during the hours of midnight to 8 in the morning. You are the one that's in charge of everything pretty much. And not pretty much, you are the one that everybody comes to. Anything goes wrong, they come to you first. You're going to get on the phone, you're going to make some phone calls, but you're the one running the prison between the hours, usually between after 9 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the morning. Whoever is the lieutenant on board in charge is running the prison. He is a warden, he's a captain, he's everything right then and there. But I enjoyed the most, and I think the most difference I was able to make was as a counselor.
Mhm.
Just that job specifically, you get the chance to work closely with inmates, make a big difference, make a big impact. With, I think, satisfactorily wise, that would be it. If I really, now that I think about it, yeah, being a counselor was gave me a lot of satisfaction, gave me a lot of leeway. My bosses were pretty good with me because I did a lot of other stuff. So having that opportunity on hand to be able to be an influence, not a change, be an influence, because the change really comes from the person itself. We really can't change nobody, but we can influence somebody and put them in the right direction or give them the right instruments for them to be able to help themselves.
And then you talked about prison transport. Now I know it's not like the movies, right? It's not you're not doing Con Air, right?
No, no.
But I'm just thinking about military wise dealing with detainees. I mean, you're dealing. I know it's different, and you've explained this before when you're dealing with people that are in a state penitentiary versus a federal institution. But what's the longest that you had to transport a prisoner, and how is that nerve wracking, and how thorough is that? Like you got to make stops, you got to do things like I want to know the details of how that your
It,
mentality of when that's happening.
it depends how many inmates we transporting, because
Mhm.
our transports were different. Yeah, you do have a Con Air. Okay, there is a huge
Oh,
U.S.
I meant like you're not doing Con Air like the movie.
No,
Like when
not
people
like the
do
movies, but there
transports,
is an airplane that
yeah.
really travels across country and does that. But then we'll have other small planes that we have to transport inmates across the United States. I think the longest one I traveled was from North Carolina all the way up to California. And yes, we had to have stop, and we were transporting this inmate. He had been in prison for a while, but he had killed an officer, so we had a little bit more. We transported him alone, and we did a couple things, funny stuff with him when, uh, and not funny. It's just we have more people whenever we moved him, and we flew on a Learjet from North Carolina. We stopped in Alabama, refueled, and from Alabama we flew into California. Um, it can be a little bit nerve wracking stopping with this guy, but that was not so much. Nerve wracking for us was transporting a guy that he had a hit on, or somebody was trying to, the possibility of taking him out of prison or something
You
like
know,
that.
to
With the
silence and
papers.
that.
So those guys were a little bit more at risk. And also, we ended up getting started dealing with terrorists that were coming into the system. That was another nerve wracking to be able to transport, whether across the United States or taking them anywhere. And we got to do that because I was in some other teams, a special operations team, and we responded to a lot of those calls.
When you're transporting like those high value targets, it's is it sort of like we do in the military where very few people know the travel plans? You know, the
Yes.
ETAs, where you're leaving
It's
from, where
only
you're
it's,
stopping.
it's only a few people. We sit down and we do an operational plan for a few days before that. We go over it. We practice a lot of these different plans when certain things are going to happen. How we're going to do and what are the stops if we have an emergency stop. If we have to turn back around or take a different route, we'll have more than one route. Where are the stops? Where are the gaps? Where are those potential areas that you can get closed off? So we have to work those out. Um, and we'll probably run a scenario first, and then we'll do them, and then we also prepare for
Like do
those.
the rock drill. You ever had one of those where you get everything in order, you're all geared up, you've got the prisoner in their proper place, and then you start out the gate, and within a mile in, one of the trucks breaks down or just something. It's like we just started and there's already an issue.
That was that called Murphy? Murphy's Law.
Murphy's Law. Yeah, like
Oh,
we're not even 5 minutes into the trip and we have an issue already.
yeah. There usually is, and you know what the usual issue is will be mostly communication. The comms go down. It's like, can you
Oh,
hear me? Can you hear me?
I,
Oh, nobody can hear each other. We're on the wrong channel. Something happens. It just always that's the main
I
thing.
swear to God, if military and correction officer and police communications works as well as it does in the movies, it'd be golden. You'll see people with a little crappy walkie-talkie in the movie, and they're talking to somebody a state over, and
Yeah,
I'm
I'm like,
5 feet
no.
from you, and I can't hear you.
Oh yeah. Oh, don't get me talking about movies. I was watching a movie the other day and I just turned it off because I was like, no, we nobody. No, I don't even want to watch that because it just wants. They start doing stuff and make the like police
Uh,
or make us look like we don't know what we're doing, and they want to really make us look stupid.
well, that's the thing that you have to like military movies. I had to turn off, and then when you started acting, you watch things a different way, and I have to turn off those receptors. Or there's so many movies I won't watch, right? So I always laughed at because the police are always cannon fodder. You know, they can't drive; they're always crashing. The prison guards are so beat upable in movies. Like one inmate's beating up like 20 guards.
Right.
It's like, Pedro, you're a pretty strong, fit guy who knows how to, several different martial arts form. And then you in the movie, you get knocked out in 2 seconds. It's over for you. So that's hilarious. I want to introduce one of our new segments that we're going to be doing in the future. And the first one that we're going to do is called Set 'em Free. Who are will be listening on podcasts, you can't see the imagery like the people who on YouTube could see, but all you heard was a sound. So, Set 'em Free is a story we're going to talk about inmates uh, and prisoners because we learned in one of our interviews when she comes back, Dr. Tammy, that there is a big difference in convicts and inmates and
Yeah.
all of those different terminologies. But Set 'em Free, did you ever deal with someone who was in your prison for a lengthy period of time and they were found innocent, or somewhere where you're just like, when you met that person, you keep talking to that person, you're like, your brain is like, wait, did they really do? They couldn't have done what they did, and then you found out they didn't do what they did, and something resolved them. Did you ever have any instances of that?
Well, one that comes to mind, it was there is a number of them. They just I wonder if they really did it. But the first one really comes to mind. I had this older gentleman in prison, and he was in one of the mental health units for a little while. And they came in to do an evaluation, and they were wanted to talk to him. And this was the government trying to do all kinds of little things because he was accused of running a enterprise.
Ponzi scheme or
No, he
anything?
was running an enterprise with drugs. He was,
Oh, okay.
he was doing this. That he had this big, like a corporation. He was running, big, a big business with his, because he was, I believe he was Colombian. The guy was Colombian, and I start talking to him, and his conversation is in Spanish. He barely, talks any English. So they asked me to come in as a translator because I did that as well um, for many other things that came into a prison, and usually I do translating from Spanish to English, and then I communicate back and forth. And I'm talking to this guy, and I know I've seen him before. I had him in prison now for a couple of years, and now they're trying to uh, do an evaluation, and they have a board. That's what it was. It was a board, and they were trying to figure out whether he did it or not. As they want to move forward into the judgment section because he wasn't. He was there for evaluation, but he was not yet gone through the entire court system. He has not been sentenced. So I talked to the guy like the first 5, 10 minutes, and I'm just speaking to him, and I realized, wow, this guy don't have no more than a third grade education. Okay, he's I touched, we shook hands, and the first thing he has these rough hands. I never forgot about how rough his hands were. So that tells me when you touch somebody's hands like that, he tells me he's a field worker. This guy working the fields. So we spoke for a few minutes, and the way he speaks the language and he speaks the Spanish, it tells me he's not very educated. Fine. So I was listening. I sat down and listened to these people and talked to him, and they're accusing him of running an enterprise, a gang enterprise. And I'm like, wow, okay, okay. So where did this come from? Come to find out, it was his son that pretty much said, no, it's my dad who's done all the stuff. I don't have nothing to do with this. It's my dad. And come to find out, the kid was lying, the man was lying because his dad, like I said, come to find out, yes, that's who he really was. He didn't have an education, he didn't have no way to run the business, and his son was putting all this on him for him to do the time and not him to get the time. So he ended up getting out, as I remember, and that was one thing that caught me. And the opportunity they did ask me. That was one thing that the guys on the board asked me. What do you think? What is your opinion about this guy? Because we don't understand much of him. He doesn't speak, and this is mid '90s. And the board was, we don't speak Spanish. What do you think about this guy? I said, well, truly, um, he's a field worker. His education, he doesn't have more than a third grade education. If he fooled me, I don't think so. Okay, because he was very humbled. Now, can we be fooled? Yes, we can be fooled. He might have played the job, and all the way through with it, and maybe he was, but I very much doubt it. Usually, these guys have a little chip on their shoulder, and they is different.
Well,
And
even the ones that fool you, if you talk to them long enough, you can catch it. Or hindsight, when you go back and rethink and hear everything, you're like, ah, I missed that. But I'm pretty sure you've played that over a
I
thousand
played that
times.
one over, and I just
We
don't
should-
see that guy. I mean, he was just his stature, the way his demeanor, and all that. Um, some guys did play that game. We usually caught some guys trying to come in because one thing about where I was in Butner, we get a lot of guys for evaluations that you see that, oh, they got arrested and they got a federal crime, they got all this stuff, and they need an evaluation because they want thing that, well, we have a mental health problem. Okay, well, let's evaluate and see if you do have a mental health problem,
Mhm.
and we put him through a ringer. We have psychologists and psychiatrists that work with him, and they also turn around. A lot of times they ask the officers. At least when I back in the '90s, they would ask the officers. They kind of got away from that a little bit, but they will ask us,
Well,
"What do you think?"
that's why a lot of old school stuff makes it hard for people to trust these days, even though things have become a lot more transparent. Um, you just
Transparent.
get so many stories from the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s where you had psychologists, psychiatrists saying things that weren't true in benefit of, the prison system.
Yeah.
And that's what led so many people to distrust And
The
today,
system.
it's nowhere near as bad, but it's hard for a lot of people who were alive or cognitive in those days to kind of trust what a prison psychologist or prison psychiatrist said, even when they would get the independent, one to come in there and do it. I like when they get an independent person and it's one that they've never dealt with, or it's not a repeat person. But I know today it's a lot more transparent than it used to be. But I understand people's skepticism when we say that. And then you have people that, like you said, they try to fake insanity or mental illness. But if you ask, we all know if you put them in the ringer long enough, you can find out that that's not a thing. Um, Even not being a psychiatrist or psychologist, you and I can sit someone down for an hour and question them and be like, that person is totally sane or that person knows what they're doing.
Yeah, we've kind of we had a the psychiatrists we have some really good ones. They will definitely find out. Um, but there also is that there's your sociopath that is not just he's not your typical con. Your
Mhm.
sociopathic person is not your typical con. So it's really hard to catch those, and you have to really work with them and be able to define where exactly you're going to place them. Because a sociopath is this is the way they think, and while you and I know this is wrong, whatever it is, for
What's
them
the
that is
worst?
correct. That's the right way, and we are wrong. And that's is
Mhm.
and you and I will think about it, and we will try to lie,
Mhm.
make up a lie, but he's not lying. For him, is the truth.
Yeah, I was
So
going to ask you, what's the worst one for you to deal with when you're dealing with all these different types, whether it's a sociopath, a narcissist? Uh, there's so many different types of people that you can deal with. What's a tough one for you?
um,
Because for me, while you're thinking, for me, it would be someone like a sociopath. Because if someone believes in their mind that this is real, this is true, and there's nothing you can do to convince that person that two plus two does not equal five, that's hard for me.
oh, it is hard. Well, you and what you do, what I used to do, I just won't argue with him. I'm not going to stand there and try to make an argument. If you wanted to be five, it's five. That's your world. That's your world, not mine.
Yeah, but I know that
Um,
can be difficult when you're trying to get someone to follow a structure or rules or and things
you
like
know
that.
what? They are very structured.
Mhm.
The worst ones, if you want that, are younger kids or younger inmates. There are in between the age of 19. I would say between 19 and 26, 28. Uh,
Especially if it's their first time, right?
Especially the first time or they've been in state and they think they have this thing about, well, you can't tell me. I am going to do whatever. I'm in the system. I'm going to make a name for myself and do all those little things and just I'm the one. It's just they haven't done enough time, and that is the worst ones. They come in and they think they can just do whatever they want to do, and they don't want structure. They just want to think, well, I don't have to do that, and they want to be chaotic.
So that's what they've been used to. And
Yes, they've been used to that until they get. Usually, it's not us.
it's
Usually,
an older, it's an
it's not
older,
us. We know,
yeah.
you know, we can't change that. It's usually not the staff. We present it. We tell them this. Is usually there's two things I think is going to make that change. Either they realize that they have to make the change, or they're not going to survive, or they realize I can't keep doing this over and over and over again because I'm not getting nowhere.
Well, sometimes it's like when you were saying it's not the staff. You know where I thought you were going. Sometimes
No,
it's
and
that.
I'm going there. It's
Oh,
not
okay.
us. It's the other inmates. That, because I had that. I had guys that were like. Um, the tell we want, especially where we were at, it was very peaceful. It's not a penitentiary, and everybody tried to get along as much as they could because there's always some people you can't get along with. But they want to. maintain the peace. They didn't want stuff from the West Coast to fly over into the East Coast or and create. They didn't want all those problems they had in other prisons. So usually those inmates they came in and wanted it to be quiet and nice and calm. They taught these other guys they were coming in and trying to create a ruckus and listen, this is not it. This is not the place. Let me show you how to do your time and how to make the most out of your time. So they helped each other. They helped each other change and make things better for themselves and try to help other ones. Those are the ones that really make some changes. We offer the change. We offer them schools. We offer them. We give them the tools. But the other inmates are the ones that are gonna come in and show them how to use them, and make themselves better. And the smart ones are the ones that are really gonna be, hey, I need help. I want to make the change. I want to get out of here and live a better life or try to help somebody else not come in here. Because the problem is, to me, the way I saw it is I saw so many awesome guys in prison. And really, and it seems like really, um, some guys could paint and they were great painters. They do these murals and they do this um, beautiful paintings and send them out. So many were talented, carpentry and doing stuff.
You also have those people that you see them and they're so smart and great at what they do. And what's that line you always say? If you would take the energy you spent in committing the crime and figuring out and casing the bank and doing all that into this thing that you can do, you could have your own. I was watching a thing on YouTube yesterday about a guy that was a counterfeit bill maker. And even when they came out with those new $100 bills with the changing paint and the micro and the
Yeah,
transparent watermark, he figured out how to paint all that and do it. And they were like, "This is the realest counterfeit I have." And now, after spending so many years in prison, he owns his own art gallery. Now, all of the skill that he put into making counterfeit money, he puts into making art. It's like, dang it! If I would have just did that in the beginning,
beginning. Yeah. Oh yeah.
I could be way wealthier and I wouldn't have the. But I mean, everybody's journey is everybody's journey. One of the things a lot of prisoners or ex convicts or whatever you want to label them need to do, because we know in some states, we've talked about this, it's hard to hire, convicted felons.
It is.
And one of the ways around that is creating your own business. No one, you cannot tell yourself you're not going to hire yourself, right?
Right.
So that's always a good avenue. But I want to get into our next segment before we wrap up today. And our next segment's going to take us a little. Well, we might get some serious stuff, but for the most part, I don't think it's funny what happened to those people. But we're going to talk about this segment called "Lock 'Em Up." I'm doing this segment, and I already screwed it up by calling it the wrong name. It's laying down the law, not
Laying
lock
down
'em
the
up.
law, lock them up.
Laying down the law, and laying down the law is supposed to be a little more humorous, even though there's victims sometimes in this. But we want to talk about stupid people who get arrested for stupid things and go to jail for stupid things. So Pedro, you got one or two. Give us your one or two best ones of, and again, we never use names unless they authorize it, but an inmate that once, especially when you were a counselor, because you got to talk to them more, an inmate that once you broke down why they were sitting in front of you, you're like, well, are you stupid? Well, but you're just like, what?
Well, yeah, I have a couple. Really, I got more than a couple comes to mind, but really thought about one. I just remembered one.
I could see the smile on your face as
Because
I was telling you that.
this is something you don't realize. Being in a federal, like say, Yosemite Park.
Hmm.
or Yellowstone. Those are federal parks and stuff like that. So I get a guy that comes in and he's doing a year and a day. No, I'm lying. He's doing a year because if you do a year and a day, you can get the 52 days off a year that you receive for good time. This is given to you. If you do a year, they won't give you nothing. There's a year and a day for you to get it. You every year that you go to prison, they give you I remember 52 days that you can take off of your sentence every year.
For
Okay.
good behavior.
And for good behavior. But we have that because we use that as well. We can remove those days when you start misbehaving. We'll take some days away from you, blah, blah. You accumulate those throughout the time and you have some in the bank. If they give you exactly a year, which the judge gave him exactly a year, he doesn't get that time. You have to do a year. So I'm wondering, why does he have a year, not a year and a day? And again, we can't give him no time. What did he do? So I started, what did you do? I go and read it. Oh, he had get arrested in a federal park. I can't remember which one, and he was drunk and urinated in public, and that's how he got his time to go to federal prison for a year. Urinated in public and being drunk and disorderly on a federal park. I was like, oh my god, you got to be kidding me. That was one, and I
That's a
had
long. Oh my god, that's a long time for
he
me.
got a year. He got a year. They could have gave him 6 months, but they gave him a year.
Oof.
They gave him a year and no time to take off. So he had to do all 12 months. And then I
Oof.
had another kid. I can't remember how much time he was doing. And he was doing time because of arson. Some arson. He burned a property on federal grounds, which really he didn't. Um, it's one of his small town kid, always getting in trouble with his friends, doing
Mhm.
stuff, and they always ended up in court, and he got in trouble. So one time he got to burn a tree, but the tree was on an offense to federal property. The half of the tree that fell over into federal property, the judge caught him on that and gave him time for that because they couldn't really give him enough time for what he had done for the city and the state. So they gave him federal time, accused him of burning property in federal government. It was something very, very crazy. I'm like, really? You doing? I can't remember. I think he's doing like 36 months or something. The judge just wanted him in prison, and they got him. Bam. Oh, I was like, oh my God, that was laying down the law. They really caught him, and he was like, yeah, I'm always doing stuff, and the judge knew him. It's funny that now that I say that because I had another case like that. The judge knew this kid doing time, and we did like what we're doing right now is not like a court session with the judge and him, and we were there, and the judge knew this kid. He's seen him all his life, but he locked him up because he's always doing something, and now he was trying to work with him and all that. But it was funny. I'm like, do you know him? Does he know you? Oh, he's known me all my life.
Jeez.
Wow. So he's waiting for me to get him. But I'm going to do better this time. I'm really am going to do better this time. Okay.
Wow.
That
You
was
know what, Pedro? As I was laughing at that story, you know what? You need to come to Miami with me on Christmas Eve. You know why?
why is that Miami? Woof.
Well, I'm buying tickets. My dad, I'm from Miami, so I'm a
Right.
Miami Dolphins fan. I'm not a new fan. I've been a Miami Dolphins fan since I
Dan
was a
Marino,
kid.
Dan Marino time fan.
Yeah. But my dad is a Cowboys fan. And since I was a kid, he always tried to convert me. And I'm like, it's not my fault that you birthed me or my mom birthed me, but you guys had me in Miami. I'm going to be a homer.
Hold on right there.
So,
You
yeah, I
see,
know. That's what I noticed. And so I'm buying him tickets to see, so we can go to the Dallas at Miami on Christmas Eve. And my uncle, his brother, who's a Steelers fan, is going to sit between us.
Oh my God. Oh, oh yeah. My son just be able to be very contrary to me. He wins and become a Steelers fan just because I'm a Cowboy fan, and I have reasons to be a Cowboy fan. And this is the reason. I was stationed at Fort Hood for several years, and Cowboys Fort Hood. They will send us tickets, and they will put us in a bus and take us to their games
Mhm.
from Fort Hood, and that was like this is when Troy Aikman was there and all that, so they would take us up there to watch the games, and then I was like,
I keep forgetting you're that much older than me. I keep thinking we're the same age. I can't. And you just said I think I was in middle school or in '92 or that time of the Troy Aikman Cowboys, and I keep thinking I'm like 43 years old. How old are you, Pedro?
"Ooh, should I
Because I'm
say
40. Because I'm
I'm
45.
you 45? I'm 57 years old.
Okay, you got me on third. Wait, 45, 57.
12
I was
years.
going to say 13 years, 12 years. I'm from Florida. Don't judge my math. Okay. So, okay, you got some, because I was at Fort Hood too. I was there 98 to 2002, and then again from 2009 to 2012. But I was a Dolphin fan, so I was never a Cowboys fan. But um, I will be sure to text and call you that week,
Oh
before
yeah,
and
yeah,
after.
yeah. That'll be fun. That'll be fun. You can do that. Um,
Well, everybody, join on the count. We're gonna have another episode at the end of each month, going into the end of the year. Um, we're gonna talk about some interesting things in November. December. One of those. We're gonna talk about what happens during holiday time in a federal prison, especially the ones that Pedro works in. We're also gonna hopefully get to catch up with a lot of our past guests that were ex-cons, ex-inmates, ex-wardens, ex-correctional officers. So we're gonna have some fun with that, and I look forward to doing those with Pedro as well.
Sure will. And that'll be a good time to talk about that because things do change a little bit. We do some stuff in the prison for. No, I ain't gonna mention what we do because
Yeah, yeah. Let's
that,
talk
that's
about that then.
okay.
Pedro dresses up like Santa Claus.
Ah, that's another story. Oh,
All right, everybody. You guys enjoy the rest of your week and your weekend, and we'll see you in a few.
all right. Thank you so much, Keone. Thank you everybody that's here and watching us. Please stay tuned. We are coming up with some shows. We are gonna have get 2023 has kind of slowed us down, but 2024 we're gonna really ramp it up and have some shows and bring up some new guests. We still gonna have some new shows coming up in the next few months and some new
Mhm.
guests. So please stay tuned. Check us out.
And
And let's go.
2024 starts our podcast version. So
There we
you'll
go.
be, for those people who just like to listen, and then those who just like to watch, they'll be able to see us as well.
Awesome.
All right, everybody.
All right.
Ciao.
Adios.